Hey, tonight, I thought we might wander into something a little strange. The idea that maybe the world around you isn't quite what it seems. You're lying there, feeling the softness of your pillow, listening to the hum of the night, and then you notice it. The faint creak in the wall, the glow from the corner of the room. What if all of that, every flicker of light and sound, is less real than it feels? Like a curtain of pixels drawn just far enough to convince you it's solid. It's unsettling, I know. You've probably never thought of your ceiling as a rendering delay before, but the thought lingers, like static on an old television, fuzzing softly at the edges of awareness. Before we fall too deep into this labyrinth of ideas, let me whisper a reminder. If you enjoy wandering down these late-night corridors with me, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. We're close to 1,900 subscribers, which amazes me every day, and I'd love to see us drift into 2,000. Do you want to join the Learn While You Sleep community? Leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. It feels like lanterns flickering in the distance, tiny lights letting me know you're out there, resting under the same quiet sky. Now, dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. Imagine reality as a video game you didn't know you signed up for. You don't remember creating an avatar. You didn't agree to terms of service. And yet, here you are, logging in every morning, yawning, stretching, scrolling through your feed like it's part of the tutorial. The thought is this: what if the world doesn't load all at once? What if, to save energy, only the parts you look at are rendered? Like a game engine that builds scenery only where you're walking, while the rest stays blurry until you turn your head. Scientists still argue whether quantum mechanics suggests something similar, that particles exist only when observed. But you don't need physics to feel the creepiness. Maybe your coffee mug exists only when you look at it. Maybe your socks don't load until you open the drawer. That could explain why one always vanishes. Think about those times you zoomed into a photo and it turned grainy. Pixels, tiny squares holding everything together, but not infinite detail. If reality itself has pixels, tiny building blocks smaller than atoms called Planck lengths, then maybe we're living in a cosmic Minecraft. Mainstream physicists have even asked whether the universe has a resolution limit, a maximum sharpness. If so, then the stars above you tonight might not be endless jewels. They might be capped by a grid, a ceiling in the code, like bumping into invisible walls in a game. You might chuckle, imagining an error message above your head. Rendering failed. Please restart consciousness. But maybe déjà vu is just lag. That eerie sense of repeating a moment. Think of it as your brain catching up to a buffer. Like when a video freezes then jumps. And when your phone lags just when you need it most. Maybe that's not bad engineering. Maybe it's the universal processor prioritizing someone else's cutscene. Of course, there are glitches. Remember walking into a room and forgetting why? Scientists debate whether that's the brain compartmentalizing or whether reality hiccuped. A fringe idea whispers that maybe the hallway didn't finish rendering until you stepped inside, and your memory couldn't reconcile the missing data. If that sounds absurd, well, it is. But so is gravity, if you think about it. You're spinning on a giant rock at about 1,000 miles per hour, yet you barely notice. Isn't that its own strange trick? The beauty of this theory is how ordinary things gain an eerie glow. The way light flickers on your wall. What if that's not electricity at all, but a recalibration of pixels? The The stillness in your room, the hum of the fan. What if those aren't just sounds but little loops of code meant to comfort you? If that's the case, then maybe comfort itself is a setting. A slider some architect nudged higher so you'd sigh and drift off at night. But the more you lean into the thought, the stranger it gets. If the world is fabricated, who or what is doing the fabricating? Are you just background code, or a privileged avatar with access to more textures than others? That, my friend, is the sort of question best left to the dream realm. Your eyelids grow heavy, but your mind feels tickled by the idea that the floor beneath your bed might not extend infinitely. It might just be a placeholder, a line of programming waiting for morning. So as you lie there, drifting towards sleep, remember, reality might be high definition, or it might be a grainy illusion just sharp enough to trick you. And maybe, just maybe, that whisper of static you hear right now, it isn't in your head at all. You drift further, carried by that whisper of static, and the thought takes on a new shape. Maybe not everyone around you is fully there. You've met them, the people who repeat the same phrases, who answer with the precision of a chatbot, who seem to run on scripts so rigid you could predict their next word before they open their mouth. A little unnerving, right? The unsettling theory is that some people aren't players at all. They're NPCs, non-player characters, filling the background of your fabricated reality. In ordinary terms, psychologists would say people sometimes run on autopilot. You drive home and don't remember the turns. You smile and nod during a meeting without hearing a word. Studies suggest nearly half of waking actions are habitual, not consciously chosen. But the fringe twist. What if some people never leave autopilot? What if that stranger on the bus repeating, "Yeah, crazy weather," like it was their only line, truly had no other line? Scientists still argue whether consciousness is an emergent property of the brain or something stranger. If human-like behavior can exist without awareness, then maybe some daily interactions are with scripted shells. Creepy, but funny too. Maybe your barista doesn't forget you because they're tired, but because their code only stores 30 seconds of customer data before refreshing. That might also explain why they keep spelling your name wrong no matter how clearly you say it. Take the Mandela Effect. Mass misremembered details, like whether Pikachu had a black tail or Monopoly Man wore a monocle. Some say that's memory quirks. Others joke it's lazy NPC coding, a patch updated in one version of reality, but not synced across every background character. Debugging, but cosmic. You might laugh, picturing the universe as one big open-world game plagued by buggy updates. Imagine cosmic tech support muttering, "Ah, shoot, half the population spelling it Berenstein again." And then there are those moments you've spoken to someone and felt a strange hollowness, as though their words weren't tethered. Maybe it's small talk that feels looped. Maybe it's the cashier who doesn't blink for too long. You brush it off as quirks of behavior. But what if those are the characters whose depth was never programmed? No real backstory, no inner life. Just enough lines to interact convincingly before fading back into scenery. Here's a fun tidbit. In games like Skyrim, NPCs sometimes generate random dialogue about the player, even when you're not near them, purely to create the illusion of depth. What if that explains overhearing strangers discuss oddly relevant topics just as you walk by? A little nudge from the simulation, filler lines to make the world feel alive. Scientists still debate whether AI could mimic human consciousness so perfectly you couldn't tell the difference. The unsettling thought, maybe you already can't. That coworker who drones the same way every day. The neighbor who waves at exactly the same time each morning. Maybe their behavior is too crisp, too scripted, too much like a loop running without deviation. Of course, let's not get too paranoid. You don't want to start side-eyeing your family at dinner, whispering NPC when they ask you to pass the salt. But wouldn't that be the perfect cover? If the simulation needed to hide filler characters, disguising them as your closest companions would be efficient. Comforting in a twisted way. Like slipping mannequins into a crowd and daring you to notice. And maybe you already have. Think back to telling a story, and the laughter came half a beat late, like a sound file lagging. Or when you texted something heartfelt, and the reply was oddly generic. Wow, that's crazy. That phrase might be the most common NPC line in history. It fits every situation. Good news, bad news, existential dread. Insert wow, that's crazy, and the program moves on. Jokes aside, there's comfort here too. If some people are NPCs, maybe the world isn't as overwhelming as it seems. Not every background character is watching, judging, or memorizing your mistakes. They're just looping quietly, filling gaps, giving you space to focus on your own arc. Like wallpaper in a larger design. And if you've ever felt invisible in a crowd, maybe that's not loneliness. Maybe it's proof you're the only true player in that scene. As you breathe slowly, sinking deeper into your mattress, let yourself smile at the absurdity. Maybe tomorrow, when you bump into that coworker who always says the same thing about the weather, you'll hear it differently. A line of code delivered faithfully, reassuringly. Proof that your fabricated world is still running smoothly. Background characters chattering away just for you. Time doesn't always flow the way we expect. Sometimes it stutters, catches, and replays itself in a way we can only describe as déjà vu. You know the feeling. You walk into a cafe you've never visited, yet you know where the sugar packets are, where the wobbly table waits. It isn't just eerie. It's like a glitch in the timeline, a bad software loop where reality pressed repeat. Mainstream science says déjà vu is your brain misfiring, filing new input into the already seen folder. But the fringe theory? Maybe time itself hiccups. Maybe the simulation buffers, freezes, then replays the moment, like a poorly synced GIF. Scientists still argue whether time is linear or something more elastic, twisting and folding when we're not looking. If the universe is code, then time is a function, and functions lag. Imagine the cosmic processor coughing mid-frame, reloading the last few seconds, and you're stuck feeling like you've been here before. That's why déjà vu is fleeting. It doesn't last because the program quickly writes itself. The hiccup passes. You keep walking, sipping your coffee, wondering if your brain is trolling you. Here's a quirky tidbit. In the 1960s, researchers tried to trigger déjà vu by stimulating the brain's temporal lobe. Patients reported vivid, "I've seen this before" feelings, even in sterile hospital rooms. Maybe that's neurons cross-wiring. But what if the brain is less the source of déjà vu and more like a screen catching static from a buggy timeline? Maybe the sparks you feel are debug messages sneaking through. Imagine, error 409, duplicate moment detected. And think about dreams. Ever had one so ordinary you forget it until reality mirrors it perfectly? You're holding a blue cup, sunlight at a sharp angle, and someone sneezes. And suddenly, you're startled because you've seen this before. Mainstream explanations say memory fragments aligned by chance. But in the fabricated reality theory, dreams are rehearsal files. rendered scenes preloaded in case the program needs them. When you stumble into them, déjà vu slaps you awake, like tripping over backstage props. The unsettling part isn't déjà vu itself, it's what it implies. If reality can loop, what else can it do? Scientists debate whether time travel is possible, but déjà vu feels like a low-budget demo. Not rewinding fully, just enough to make you suspicious. Maybe the universe keeps backups, and when one crashes, you're shifted to a saved checkpoint. Ever notice déjà vu feels like a fork in the road? You pause, then continue slightly altered. That pause might be the moment the system reboots you. You laugh softly, because the thought makes traffic jams tolerable. Maybe the endless red light is the simulation stalling, buffering until enough code loads ahead. And maybe those conversational hiccups, the sentence restarted, the misplaced word, are fragments of reality speech recognition faltering. Everyone shrugs it off, but you catch it, and it hums like a bug report in the back of your mind. Now, think about animals. Ever notice your cat stares at nothing, eyes wide, tracking invisible movement? Scientists say cats hear frequencies we can't. A fringe believer might argue they're spotting frame skips, catching rendering delays your eyes miss. Your dog barking into the corner isn't paranoia, it's them barking at a stutter in the code. If true, then your pet is less companion, more glitch detector. Not quite comforting when you're home alone. But hey, at least you're not the only one noticing. Think about history repeating, not metaphorically, but in cultural reruns. Bell-bottom jeans returning, endless superhero reboots, headlines that echo ones you swear you've read before. Maybe it's not nostalgia. Maybe the simulation is recycling assets to save processing power. Why design new wardrobe options when the 1970s pack is tested? Why invent new storylines when the old code is stable? You laugh again, imagining reality's developers shrugging. Just reuse the disco pants. Scientists still puzzle over the arrow of time. Why we only move forward when equations don't forbid backward motion. If déjà vu is a hiccup in that arrow, maybe the universe isn't as strict as it looks. Maybe the arrow is just a progress bar, and sometimes it jumps backward 1% or 2. Not enough to crash the system, just enough for you to blink and mutter, "Haven't I done this already?" So next time déjà vu strikes, instead of brushing it off, you might smile at the absurdity. Maybe you've just caught the universe red-handed, repeating itself, like catching a magician palming a card, or a video buffering mid-frame. That ripple isn't proof you're broken. It's proof the simulation isn't as seamless as it pretends. And if your fabricated reality is full of loops and lags, maybe sleep itself is just the nightly reboot, patching your memories before you wake to another cycle. And here you are, patch installing even now, sinking deeper into rest. Reality doesn't always feel accidental. Sometimes it hums with the weight of design, as if drawn from a hidden blueprint long before you took your first breath. Ancient civilizations whispered about it in their myths. Architects of the cosmos, hidden coders, divine draftsmen. The Egyptians spoke of gods shaping the world with words, like voice-activated programming. The Mayans etched calendars that seemed to map not only seasons, but cycles of reality itself. Even Plato, sipping his wine under Athenian stars, suggested the world we see is just a shadow on the wall, the faint sketch of a deeper design. Scientists still argue whether such myths were poetry or glimpses of an older truth. Picture it. An architect seated before a glowing console of stars, adjusting gravity like a dial, dragging timelines across a cosmic drafting table. Every mountain range, coastline, and fingerprint is a blueprint line, precisely drawn, precisely rendered. That little freckle on your arm? Maybe it's not chance. Maybe it's the simulation's watermark, the designer's signature, like leaving initials in the corner of a painting, a reminder that this world is art as much as code. Here's a quirky detail. Medieval builders often hid playful carvings in cathedrals, tiny gargoyles, monks etched in scandalous poses, things no ordinary worshipper would ever notice. Why? Perhaps to amuse the masons, or perhaps as inside jokes for those who knew where to look. If reality is architected, who's to say the same isn't true here? Maybe the platypus is just a cosmic joke, a creature assembled from leftover parts, slipped into the final draft because someone behind the curtain couldn't resist. You glance at your room, the way shadows stretch across the wall. Imagine those shadows not as accidents, but deliberate brushstrokes. Every angle, every hum in the air, chosen. Scientists still debate whether the physical constants of the universe are finely tuned or just random luck. Why is gravity so precise, light so fast, water so strange? A fraction off, and stars wouldn't burn, life wouldn't form. To some, that's coincidence. To others, architectural perfection, as if the universe was calibrated to load smoothly, like a game set on easy mode, challenging enough to engage you, but not so broken the file crashes. You smile drowsily at life's absurdities as design quirks. Why hiccups? Why does bread fall butter side down? Maybe those aren't flaws, but Easter eggs, subtle nudges from the blueprint to remind you this isn't purely mechanical. They're like squeaky floorboards, unnecessary but atmospheric. Even the soft hum of your fan right now might be part of the design, included to calm you at the edge of sleep. Think of sacred geometry, the spirals of seashells, hexagons of honeycombs, fractal ferns. Mainstream fact: these shapes follow mathematical rules, like the Fibonacci sequence, appearing across nature with uncanny regularity. But through this lens, they're not just math. They're recurring motifs, the blueprint's signature curves repeating across leaves and galaxies alike. And what about dreams? Perhaps they aren't random wanderings, but private tours of the blueprint room. Staircases leading nowhere, half-finished cities, scenes under construction. Architects know blueprints aren't always neat. Sketches overlap, erased lines bleed through. Scientists still puzzle over why dreamscapes carry such strange architecture, stairways twisting like Escher drawings. Could it be you've glimpsed the scaffolding of the simulation itself? Then there's language, the oldest tool of design. Cultures believe words could shape reality. Let there be light, says one tradition, and light flickers on. Shamans chant, monks sing, poets whisper, and reality bends. Even now, in programming, typed words spark entire worlds. Maybe the parallel isn't coincidence. Maybe when you mutter, "This day is cursed," the blueprint tilts slightly, shifting your path. And when you whisper gratitude before sleep, the walls of your fabricated world hum just a little more warmly. So here you are, lying quietly in a room that feels ordinary, but isn't. It is built, drafted, every object around you, from the stitching in your blanket to the sound of a distant car, belongs to a vast design. The unsettling part is you may never meet the architect. The soothing part is that the blueprint still holds you, gently, night after night, like a cathedral ceiling drawn centuries before you stepped inside. This reality arches above you, pixel by pixel, line by line. And as you sink deeper, maybe you feel a new kind of comfort. If the world is fabricated, at least it was designed beautifully, with symmetry and strangeness, humor tucked into corners, patterns carved into seashells and freckles. You drift, a sleeper lying on the blueprint itself, lulled by its endless, deliberate lines. Reality isn't as seamless as it pretends. Sometimes it flickers at the edges, patched together like code that never fully compiles. At the tiniest scales, particles appear, vanish, and reappear like cosmic pranksters. Physicists call it quantum foam, a jittering sea where energy winks in and out of existence. But you can think of it as sloppy hotfixes, tiny software updates pushed into the code while you aren't looking, like invisible fingers stitching over a tear in the fabric. Scientists still argue whether these quantum blips are real particles or just fluctuations of energy. But either way, they don't behave like solid bricks. Imagine the walls of your house flickering out for a fraction of a second, then snapping back before you noticed. That's unsettling. And yet, that's what's happening at the base of everything. If your walls don't crumble, maybe it's because the rendering engine is exceptionally good at keeping the patchwork hidden. Here's a quirky detail. Programmers call messy fixes that spawn new problems spaghetti code. If the universe runs on spaghetti code, it explains the little inconsistencies we laugh at. Why does toast fall butter side down? Why do socks vanish in dryers? Why does your phone lag most when you're in a rush? Sure, coincidences. But perhaps strands of spaghetti dangling loose from the cosmic processor, visible only when you happen to trip over them. Quantum physics has another trick: entanglement. Two particles, separated by miles, still mirror each other instantly, like twins texting without a data plan. Einstein called it spooky action at a distance. In a simulation, though, it's just a shortcut. Why waste bandwidth sending signals across space when you can duplicate a single variable? Set, spin X up here, and the twin particle auto-updates. Efficient, yes, but also suspiciously lazy, like a programmer who prefers copy-paste to elegant functions. And then there's the double-slit experiment. Fire particles at two slits, and they act like waves. Watch them closely, and suddenly they act like solid particles again. Scientists still debate why observation changes the outcome. But within this theory, the answer is obvious. The program saves resources. If no one's watching, reality loads the efficient wave version. If someone peeks, the system scrambles to render high-resolution particles. You're not observing reality. It's observing you, making sure the trick holds. You smile at the absurdity. Imagine cosmic patch notes. Version 1.08. Fix particle clipping error. Adjusted gravity. Nerfed dinosaurs. Maybe that's why extinctions happen. Massive patches rolled out overnight. And maybe the Mandela Effect is just the notes they forgot to publish. People swore it was Berenstein Bears because that was version 1.07. Now you're in 1.08, and the code disagrees. Debug echoes left behind in the minds of attentive players. Not every patch is sloppy, though. Sometimes it's elegant. Consider snowflakes, each unique, each formed by molecules aligning to invisible rules. That's not chaos. That's a delicate subroutine. Or fireflies syncing their blinking across forests, a secret rhythm pulsing through the night. Science provides explanations, But even scientists admit they don't fully understand why the synchronicity is so perfect. If you were writing a program to enchant your players, wouldn't you add fireflies too? Still, glitches sneak in. Déjà vu might be a rollback patch, undoing a tiny error. Dreams that feel like warnings could be patch notes delivered through subconscious cutscenes. Even those eerie silences or shadows that feel misplaced could be rendering errors, smoothed over the moment you blink. Your own body feels like patchwork too. Hiccups, scientists trace them to evolutionary leftovers, but maybe there are forgotten debug loops still running in the background. Sneezes, perhaps the system refreshing your interface. Imagine your nose as an input device, glitching with excess pollen data. Strange, unnecessary, but still part of the program. And that's the comforting part. If the universe really is patched and repatched, then imperfection is woven into the design. Mistakes aren't failures, they're updates. Your own life, with its errors and retrees, mirrors the same cosmic spaghetti code. Each stumble, laugh, correction, and restart is just another iteration of the debugging process. Messy, yes, but alive, ongoing, adaptive. So as you drift deeper, the thought settles. You don't need a perfectly clean reality. The glitches, the patches, the quiet fixes are proof this fabricated world is still alive, still being tended, still updating one hotfix at a time. And tonight, as you sleep, perhaps a patch rolls gently across your own story, smoothing edges, syncing variables, rendering tomorrow just a little sharper than today. Memory is a softer fabric than we like to believe. Stretch it, fold it, and sometimes it frays, leaving space for something new to be stitched in. The unsettling thought is that your past, the anchor you cling to as solid, personal, untouchable, might itself be edited like a buggy save file. Every dream, every déjà vu, every forgotten childhood moment could be a patch applied while you sleep. You wake believing the past has always been this way, but maybe it wasn't. Maybe yesterday looked different until something decided a new version fit better. Neuroscientists know memory isn't a perfect recording. Each time you recall something, your brain rebuilds it, like loading a file from scratch. Details shift, colors fade, pieces vanish. Scientists still debate whether memory is reliable at all, or just an elaborate illusion stitched from fragments. The stranger thought, if your brain can rebuild memories, why couldn't an external system do the same? A simulation could rewrite events entirely, syncing the change across every player's mind. You'd never notice. Here's a quirky fact. Researchers have implanted false memories in volunteers, convincing people they met cartoon characters in theme parks, or that they once got lost in a mall as children. These things never happened, but after suggestion and repetition, people swore they remembered. If we can edit ourselves so easily, imagine what a cosmic editor could do. That embarrassing moment from your school days. Maybe it wasn't even yours. Maybe it was quietly written in later, and you accepted it as truth. Think about the Mandela Effect. Names, logos, small details that feel wrong but impossible to prove. Some call it faulty memory. Others see it as evidence of edits. You remember one version, someone else remembers another, and both feel real. It's like comparing screenshots from slightly different builds of the same world. Something shifted, but no one can agree exactly where. Dreams, too, become suspicious. You wake thinking they were nonsense. Giant animals, melting staircases, strange phone numbers. But what if those fragments are discarded drafts? rough edits tested and thrown away. Dreams could be the recycle bin, a gallery of timelines that didn't make the final cut. Sometimes one slips through, like déjà vu, or that eerie sense of, I've done this before. Scientists still puzzle over memory's fragility. Trauma, for example, often distorts recollection. Some details sharpen unnaturally, others vanish completely. Psychology calls it protection. But through this lens, trauma might be where the patching system faltered. Too much data at once, too messy to overwrite cleanly. That's why scars of memory feel jagged, corrupted files, only half replaced. Consider history itself. Records are revised, textbooks updated, evidence lost. Did the library burn? Or was it simply patched out of existence? Maybe those gaps aren't accidents at all. They're edits. Civilizations appear and vanish, leaving ruins behind but no clear story. And you're told, that's just the passage of time. But maybe it's pruning. Old code removed, new stories uploaded, the hard drive cleared for more. Here's where humor slips in. Losing your keys might not be forgetfulness. Maybe they really were on the table yesterday, but today the patch notes deleted them. Or when you argue with a friend about a childhood jingle, and you're both certain your version is right. What if you're both correct, just recalling different drafts? Someone behind the curtain ran an experiment, and you each downloaded opposite results. And what about your identity? The stories you tell, how you were shy as a child, how you loved a certain toy, how you once wore that haircut you regret. Maybe those are just lines from the current build. In another version, you weren't shy at all. You were bold, reckless, completely different. That timeline was patched away, leaving you with only the files considered stable. The unsettling part is you'll never know what's missing. The soothing part is you don't need to. The patch is seamless enough to feel like truth. So tonight, as you drift on the edge of sleep, consider this. Maybe dreams are the update process. Maybe the strange narratives you wander through, flying, falling, running endlessly, are loading screens as your memories are rebuilt. Each morning, you wake believing you've always been this way, carrying the memories left behind. And maybe that's enough, because whether your past was rewritten or not, it still feels real to you. The laughter, the tears, the moments that surface late at night, they belong to you, no matter how many times the code has been patched. And as you breathe deeply now, drifting further, your memories blur at the edges, like watercolor on damp paper. Not gone, just gently rewritten, preparing you for tomorrow's version. Your breathing deepens, steady and heavy, and a darker thought drifts in. Not frightening, just weightier, like the pull of gravity itself. Black holes, those cosmic abysses that swallow stars, light and time, turning them into mysteries too dense to grasp. Scientists describe them as collapsed stars, singularities where physics itself unravels. But tilt the angle, and through the lens of a fabricated reality, maybe black holes aren't just natural at all. Maybe they're the recycling bins of the simulation, cosmic trash cans gulping down corrupted files and broken code. Astronomers have detected black holes colliding, sending out ripples that travel across the universe, stretching and squeezing the very fabric of space. But what if those ripples aren't just collisions? What if they're system logs, reality shuddering as old data is compressed and cleared away? Imagine the universe groaning like a hard drive defragmenting, except the hard drive is existence itself. Here's a curious thought. Some physicists once suggested black holes don't destroy information, but preserve it, forever written onto their event horizons, like backup drives at the edge of reality. If that's true, maybe nothing that falls into a black hole is gone. It's archived. The last cry of extinct animals, the fading voices of forgotten cities, even your smallest private moments, all filed away somewhere in a cosmic server waiting for a restore. Comforting in a strange way. The paradox still lingers. Is information erased or saved? But if you see the universe as a program, the answer feels simple. Nothing truly disappears. Files moved to another folder still exist. Deleted things linger until the next purge. And maybe that's what black holes are. Massive cleanups, emptying the trash so new patches can run without error. Think about the way an event horizon works. Once you cross it, no signal escapes, not even light. That sounds terrifying until you imagine it as a firewall. Maybe the simulation doesn't want corrupted data leaking outward. Once a star collapses into nonsense code, it's sealed, quarantined, safely tucked away. Nothing gets out, because nothing should. The strange beauty is that reality may not be breaking down at all. It's being maintained, like a gardener trimming weeds or a coder squashing bugs. And maybe that explains dark energy, the mysterious force pushing the universe to expand faster and faster. Physics admits the cause is unknown. But imagine it as the system creating more storage space. The drive is filling, the bins are crowded, so the program stretches the fabric of space to make room for more files. Your galaxy, your stars, even your sleepy body, all part of a universe expanding to accommodate growing data. There's humor in it too. What if déjà vu, the loops you feel, are reality trying to avoid deletion? A temporary save before your moment gets recycled. Or maybe déjà vu is you brushing against ghost data, an old file that should have been purged but still lingers, like a forgotten message hiding on your phone. Animals may notice these processes as well. Ever see a cat staring at an empty corner, ears twitching, eyes locked? Scientists say they're reacting to subtle cues we miss. But maybe they're sensing background cleanups, server hums at the edge of perception. Maybe your cat stares at a blank patch of wall because, for a second, that patch wasn't there. It was flagged, removed, then reloaded just as you blinked. Here's another possibility. When stars vanish into black holes, perhaps they aren't destroyed but compressed into packets of data. Maybe the starlight you see isn't the star at all, but its compressed echo, a little zip file projected into the night sky. That would explain why stars seem so ancient when their light reaches you. Not distance alone, but lag. The universe buffering, just enough so the scenery feels seamless. The unsettling humor of it is this. Even death might be nothing more than deletion. Your body removed, your experiences zipped and stored in the recycling bin. But don't frown. If information is conserved, you're never truly erased. You're archived. Your quirks, your laughter, the small details that make you you. All of it waiting somewhere in the system, ready to be reused. And as you drift closer to sleep, the idea softens. Recycling isn't loss, it's renewal. Your days, your memories, your stumbles, they don't vanish. They become compost for the next version of reality. Somewhere, in the quiet hum of space, black holes are tidying up, pruning, preserving, keeping the code from collapse. And tonight, as you breathe in and out, your own system recycles too, letting go of the clutter of the day, archiving what you no longer need, preparing you for tomorrow's lighter, cleaner load. there's a hush that settles in the room, the kind of silence that makes every flicker feel sharper, every shadow a little heavier. In that stillness, odd things slip through. A shape in the corner of your eye, a word you almost said, a memory you're sure you shared but no one else recalls. These are the echoes, the debug whispers of a fabricated world. Ghosts, déjà vu, strange mismatched memories. They may not be illusions at all, but artifacts of a reality still ironing out, it seems. The brain is an extraordinary pattern detection machine, so sharp it sometimes invents patterns where none exist. That's why we see faces in clouds or feel phantom vibrations. Scientists argue whether paranormal moments are simply this overactive wiring or something stranger bleeding through. The twist? Maybe they're not mistakes of perception. Maybe they're glimpses of the system's hidden layers, debug echoes leaking into the script. Think of ghosts. Pale figures drifting through halls, footsteps on empty stairs, voices in places no one should be. Skeptics roll their eyes, yet these stories appear in every culture across centuries. If the simulation has memory, perhaps ghosts are just fragments not properly erased. Like uninstalling a program, but finding files still hidden deep inside. That could explain why hauntings so often repeat. The same steps, the same words, endlessly. Not conscious spirits, but corrupted loops of leftover code. Here's a playful idea. In computing, there's something called a phantom read. When data appears once, then vanishes. Imagine reality with the same bug. You glimpse a figure at the end of the hall, blink, and it's gone. Phantom read. The database of existence correcting itself. And what about false memories, the kind entire groups swear by? Mainstream thought blames memory's fragility. But what if those were real lines of code from an earlier build? You remember them too clearly to overwrite. Your mind caught one update, someone else another, and the system never synced. That stubbornness makes sense here. An old variable clashing with the new patch, leaving cognitive static behind. Déjà vu belongs in this category too. If memory can lag, maybe perception can as well. Perhaps the present is processed twice, once quickly, once in higher detail, and the overlap becomes that uncanny sense of repeat. Like hearing your voice echo on a delay, unsettling and strange. A neural misfire, perhaps, but just as easily the system stuttering mid-frame. And then there's prophecy. Dreams that feel like previews, hunches that prove right, lines you somehow knew before they were spoken. Science, gestures a coincidence. But within this lens, maybe they're files leaking ahead of schedule. A scene pre-rendered before its debut. The interference slips through, and you walk around with the eerie weight of having glimpsed the future. Humor hides here too. Think of the Wi-Fi dropping at the worst moment, during a meeting, in mid-sentence, right as you need it most. Maybe that's not bad luck. Maybe it's the simulation reallocating bandwidth, giving someone else priority while you fade briefly into background traffic. And when your signal returns, perhaps somewhere else, another person feels their world glitch instead. And what about dreams of loved ones who have passed? They visit, they smile, they speak words of comfort. Science says it's grief echoing. But maybe they're cached files, fragments of code still stored locally in you. The system lets you access them at night, like reopening an archived conversation. Not physical, but meaningful all the same. You wake with the warmth still clinging, as though the interference left a gift. Here's another thought. Maybe superstition itself is debugging behavior, knocking on wood, tossing salt, crossing fingers, rituals that don't work scientifically, but might echo the gestures of the code itself. Subconscious alignment with the way the system prefers to run. That's why so many cultures invent similar practices, not because people are irrational, but because they're responding to background interference. So as you lie here now, fan humming, shadows stretching softly, let your mind lean into the static. Every flicker, every odd silence, every moment that feels off might not be a flaw in you at all, but in the system itself. Debug echoes surfacing just long enough to remind you reality is not as seamless as it pretends, and instead of fearing it, you can smile. Because if ghosts are leftovers, if déjà vu is lag, if strange memories are mismatched servers, then each unsettling mystery is proof you are awake inside the code. And tonight, as you drift further into sleep, the interference softens. It smooths into white noise. Not a bug, not a glitch, just the lullaby of a system still humming in the background, keeping your world alive. There's a quiet moment, the kind where your breath slows and the room feels almost watchful, as though reality itself is waiting for you to notice it. A shadow shifts when you glance, a detail sharpens when you lean closer. The thought drifts in. Maybe the act of observing doesn't just record reality, it changes it. Not only in science labs with their lasers and particles, but here, in your ordinary sleepy life. In physics, the famous double-slit experiment shows particles behaving like waves until observed, when they suddenly snap into place. Scientists still argue whether this means consciousness helps create reality, or whether it's simply a quirk of measurement. But in the simulation lens, the explanation is simpler. The system economizes. Why render every blade of grass in perfect detail if no one is looking? It waits for your glance, then loads the scenery in real time. Game designers use a trick called culling, rendering only what's in the player's view. Everything else remains hazy or isn't generated at all until needed. If your world works the same way, then when you close your eyes, the walls could vanish, the streets dissolve, the stars flicker into emptiness, returning only when you look again. You don't notice the absence because you weren't observing. Think about coincidences. A certain number follows you everywhere. A song you hum suddenly plays in the cafe, then again in the supermarket, then on the car radio. Psychology calls it the frequency illusion. You see more of what you're already paying attention to. But through this lens, maybe the system is responding. You focus, so it generates more. You expect, so it provides. Like typing a search into a cosmic engine and watching reality autofill your world. Scientists still debate whether consciousness plays a fundamental role in physics. If your mind truly helps collapse possibilities into outcomes, then every glance, every thought, every small act of attention is part of creation. That would mean you're not just a passive player, you're a co-renderer. The unsettling part is realizing you've been shaping reality all along. The soothing part? If you've ever felt powerless, maybe you're not. Perhaps the world rearranges itself around the weight of your gaze. Consider stage magic. A magician waves one hand to distract while the other does the trick. Your attention decides what you see, and what you see becomes the truth of the moment. Life often feels the same. You fix on one detail, and the rest fades. Maybe it's not only psychology. It could be the rendering engine saving bandwidth, quietly erasing what you ignore. Here's a lighter thought. Walking into a room and forgetting why you came. Science calls it the doorway effect, a context shift in memory. But perhaps it's the system pausing to load the new scene. While it renders, your short-term memory clears, leaving you blinking at the fridge, wondering if you wanted milk or distraction. You laugh because it feels too fitting. And dreams, always dreams. What if their vividness comes from you observing them as they happen? When you wake, the memory slips away because you stop looking. The system deletes the files to save space. That would explain why they vanish so quickly. The same goes for fleeting sparks of inspiration, the ideas that glow while you're focused, then dissolve the moment your mind wanders. Think about people as well. Sometimes it feels as though they only exist when you interact with them. That old friend you haven't spoken to in years, do they live a full life off screen? Or do they boot up when you send a message? Mainstream thought insists, of course, they exist independently. But in the fabricated view, maybe it's efficient to render their details only when needed. Everyone else could be blurred background until your gaze sharpens them. Even randomness itself puzzles scientists. Why outcomes can't be predicted, only described by chance. But in this frame, randomness is procedural generation. The program spawns results only when observed, using probability as its shortcut. You open the box, and only then is the cat a gav or one. The coin heads or tails. The outcome doesn't exist in advance. It arrives the moment you look. So as you lie here now, watching the shadows shift across your ceiling, imagine them dissolving the instant your eyes close. Not eerie, but intimate. Like the system whispering, "Rest now. We'll take care of the rest." Observation paused, world in standby. And tomorrow, when you open your eyes again, reality will load back in, crisp, convincing, as though it had always been there. And maybe it has. Or maybe it never was until you looked. Your breath slows, the weight of your body pressing deeper into the mattress. And in that softness, a final ripple rises. What happens at the very end of the program? If reality is coded, if memory is patched, if black holes recycle and ghosts are echoes, then what about death? The unsettling thought is that maybe it isn't a mystery at all. Maybe it's simply logging out. Every living system eventually wears down. Cells stop dividing, organs falter, the body returns to dust. Scientists still argue whether consciousness ends entirely, or whether some trace persists in ways we cannot measure. But through the simulated lens, death is less catastrophe and more like a user clicking exit. The file closes, the screen fades, and somewhere a quiet log appears. Player has signed off. A curious detail from old arcade machines. When powered off, some would flash hidden screens, developer names, private jokes, secret notes left for anyone who happened to notice. Imagine if reality does the same. Perhaps at the moment of death, there is a flash, a glimpse of the architect's signature, a wink in the code, not terrifying, but oddly tender, like the universe leaning close to whisper, "Thank you for playing." Consider near-death experiences. People describe tunnels of light, familiar faces waiting, waves of peace. Mainstream science explains it as oxygen deprivation, neural fireworks in crisis. But what if those visions are log-out animations, graceful exits coded into the system so players leave calmly? A soft fade-out, the universe's own shut-down sound, luminous and warm, easing you gently away. And then there is reincarnation. Cultures across the world hold that we return in new lives, new forms. Scientists doubt whether memory or identity could survive beyond the body. Yet in a simulation, rebooting a player is simple. Load a new avatar. Perhaps you've played many times before, each patch testing a slightly different build. A recurring dream, an irrational fear, a sudden familiarity with a place you've never been. They could all be fragments from past logins, leftovers slipping through the code. Humor sneaks in here too. Imagine reaching the end, sighing at all the embarrassing moments, only to respawn in a cosmic lobby where a highlight reel plays. Really? You tripped over your shoelaces again? Why did you send that message at 2 a.m? Maybe the afterlife isn't heaven or hell, but a blooper reel and a chance to choose your next difficulty setting. Easy mode, hard mode, sandbox. Each new life another experiment. Scientists still struggle with consciousness, the one thing you know directly but can't pin down. Is it only neurons firing or something deeper? If it's code, then it doesn't die with the hardware. The server remains. When you log out, the system still holds your data. Perhaps that's why so many traditions promise reunion, continuity, some kind of persistence. Not mystical, just practical. Files aren't erased, they're archived. Think too about sleep. Every night you partially log out, awareness dissolving while your body rests. And every morning you log back in. Death could be the long version of this cycle, a deeper reboot. That makes tonight's drowsiness feel gentler, doesn't it? Each breath carrying you into a smaller temporary logout, safe and reversible, with the world waiting faithfully for your return. And what about the ones you've lost? In this view, they're not gone. They've logged out, yes, but their data persists. That's why you dream of them, why you sometimes feel their presence. They're still on the server, just not in your current session. The thought softens the sharpness of absence. They are not erased, they are simply archived, shimmering in another folder you can't yet open. And maybe one day, when the system calls you back, those files will load again beside your own. So the end of the program isn't an end at all. It's a pause, a graceful exit, a hand guiding you back to the lobby. And while that sounds unsettling, it's strangely soothing, because if every logout is followed by another login, then the curtain never truly falls. The play continues with new scenery, new scripts, new roles waiting for you to step into. As you lie here now, on the edge of sleep, you can almost hear it, the faint hum of the server, the quiet tick of background code keeping your world alive. And you can almost feel it, the softness of the exit, the promise that nothing ever really ends. When the time comes, you'll log out. For now, you simply rest, drifting into a smaller rehearsal for the greater sleep. And tomorrow, when you wake, you'll log back in, refreshed, ready, still part of the strange fabricated dream. Soften everything now. The theories fade into whispers. The glitches dissolve into background hum. You lie in the dark, your body heavy, your mind lighter with every breath. Whatever the truth of this reality, pixels, patches, blueprints, or simply dreams, it has carried you safely here, into this quiet moment. You are not lost. You are not glitched. You are simply drifting, gently, deeper and deeper, the day erased behind you, the night opening before you like a soft, infinite sky. Rest now. The world will still be here when you wake. Sweet dreams.